Yes, that's right. It's Joe here for Joyrider TV, and we're back with some more What Went Wrong. In this episode of What Went Wrong, we are in for a pentalogy of epic dismounts. Oh yes. So we're kicking off in Maui, sailing with Ryan and Joseph on the Nacra 500 Honeycat on a very hot beam reach, ending with a dynamic pitch pole. But why did that happen? So if we just hang on here, we can see part of the setup. The main offender here, I would say, is that the Traveller is locked into the middle, and you can see the amount of slack in the main sheet. That amount of slack opens up the mainsail so much that the top part of the mainsail is very much pushing the bows down. We could mention that the jib is probably a bit cranked in as well for this sort of sailing, and then as the bow goes in, the weight of the crew and the helm moving forwards means that the end result is inevitable. I'd also have to say very well done to Ryan for letting go of the tiller extension there. It's a very common way of snapping your tiller extension, is holding on to it for too long when you bin it. Great job though, guys, all adds to the experience. I think this Honeycat has certainly been capsized more than once. Okay, so we're now on board with David on the Hobie 18. Absolutely hammering it, having a great time. And oh my gosh, what happened there? So if we take a look at the event, again, we could see here it would be beneficial to perhaps have a bit more Traveller eased, more main sheet on for a greater amount of control. But the main culprit here is we can see the guys on the 18 are trapezing quite high. So this angle of hull flying, we should be able to stay on the trapeze. Because he's trapezing quite high, loses his footing, slides across the trampoline, and as luck would have it, goes into the jib cleat, releasing the jib, which is enough to bring that bad boy back down under control. In fact, we can see here it actually broke the jib fitting, meaning there's no jib on at all. We can see the trapeze elastic's broken as well. Great job there, great save, and I hope you have some more great sailing soon. Okay, so here we are, we're on board with Greg and Laura on our Hobie 20 Miracle. So the guys are sailing along on a broad reach, really good trim, weight well forwards. Now Greg having a bit of a sticky time with his tiller extension, and one thing with being so far forwards when it's quite windy is you don't have the ability to bear away in the gusts if it starts getting a bit hot. So unable to bear away because he was so far forwards meant that it was a kind of bow digging in, hull flying, losing control of the steering. Being a bit further back with better ability to steer would have avoided that capsize, I'm sure. Also here you can see they're sailing with one rudder up, and then just that little bit of heading up puts the bows down enough so that that one rudder no longer has any grip. So the chance of bearing away is 0. Part 2 of this story is after the boat was righted. This is a really unpleasant situation to be in. on any type of boat, because the boat is quite clearly sailing forwards. We can actually see that it's going forwards. On the telemetry there, it only says 3 miles per hour, but even that is enough to make it very difficult to get your legs behind you so that you can get onto the boat. So how could we stop the boat from moving forwards? Well, unfortunately, by the time you get to this stage, it's too late. The preparations need to be made before righting the capsize. So the main culprit here is the traveller and the main sheet are all the way out, which means the boat is very free just to bear away and keep sailing. If you had the traveller in the centre before righting the capsize, that means as the wind catches the sail, it would turn the boat up into the wind. We can also see the jib has got some pressure in it, which is also pulling the bow of the boat off the wind and keeping it sailing. In the end here, Greg did the only thing that he could and got to the back of the boat, just lowered himself backwards on the righting line, and then getting on over the back beam is certainly quite a good option if the rudders are across, because the back of the boat generally sits a lot lower. Now, if we just rewind for a second to when the guys are at the front of the boat, one thing that you could try is try grabbing hold of that trapeze line, and that might make it a lot easier to pull yourself up onto the boat. But fortunately, Greg and Laura managed to get back on and get sailing again, but not a pleasant experience, so I hope that we can learn from that. Now, this jibe is a bit dicey because the main sheet is so far out. It meant the mainsail went across really late, could have caused another capsize, and I think if there had been another capsize at that point, there might have been a sense of humour failure on board the Hobie 20. Thanks very much, guys. Okay, so here we've got Aziz sailing on the Totalcat K2. Absolute champagne conditions there in Egypt. And sticking the nose in, but kind of like a half pitch pole, half capsize there. But the sticking of the nose in was what led to the sideways capsize. Now, this is a very similar situation to what we've already seen in this episode. First culprit is having the traveller too much to the centre so that you're sailing without enough main sheet tension on. By easing the traveller out a bit more means you can sail with more main sheet on, and it means you don't have to play as much sheet to stay in control. The number 2 on this one was perhaps again the jib was too sheeted in, especially solo when you don't have the ability to sheet out at all. And then number 3 on this occasion, I would say you could certainly be trapezing a bit further back. So you want to get your back foot at least behind the back crossbar when sailing on a fairly hot reach like you were here. But this really does look like some great sailing. Thanks very much, Aziz, for sharing that, and hopefully something that everybody can learn from your experience. Although it can be quite an inconvenience when you capsize, you pitch pole, or you stack it generally, you shouldn't necessarily see it as a massively negative thing that is happening. Each time we capsize, we can learn from it, and being the sailors of small catamarans, it is going to happen from time to time. The more times that you capsize your boat, the more it means that you know where the limits are for your boat. So we're finishing off with something pretty special back in Maui with Ryan and Joseph on the 500. Now we're going into a jibe here, and what do you think is going to happen? Oh, yes. So what we can see here is that Ryan's got his mainsail so far out that it's almost like capsizing in a laser where we're sailing by the lee. That is actually that we're sailing on the other tack with the mainsail on the original side. This actually leads to the windward hull going in, and we're capsizing pretty much to windward there. So what can we do to avoid this? Don't have so much sail out going into the jibe. Remember that when you're going into a windy jibe, going into it fast and with confidence are the things that you need to be doing to take the pressure out of the rig and prevent the capsize. What you can also do to encourage the mainsail to go across a bit earlier is just as you're getting to that point dead downwind, take the falls of the main sheet, pull them, which is going to pull the sail into the centre, and that will get the sail to go across a bit earlier, which means you're more likely to carry your speed through the turn. But thanks for that, Ryan. That was certainly a dynamic dismount to finish off this episode of What Went Wrong, and thanks to everybody for getting involved. So until next time, stay safe out there. I'll be back soon with some more on Joyrider TV.